It is the Fantasy Pros Best Ball Show, and Andrew, it is August. Our first one of these in August this year. How you feeling, man, as we get round to the absolute business end of the fantasy football off season?
I'm so excited, Tom. We're here. We're finally here. We made it to August. We've been doing this stream, I think, since May, June. I don't remember, but now training camps are flying. We've already had an NFL game in the books. Chargers money line was the bet to make. So feeling good about the preseason bets, feeling good about the best ball teams, and psyched to be here, breaking it down. August. Let's go, baby.
Let's go, indeed. And yeah, we're going to break down a whole bunch of rosters tonight. We're going to start with some of mine and some of Andrew's and talk about how we approach the teams that we've been drafting. But then we're going to get on to, more importantly, some of the great people from the Fantasy Pros Discord who have given us a whole bunch of teams from different contests, different platforms. We're going to talk about what we like about their rosters, what we might have done differently, and basically just try and help you guys get to the end of this best ball off season and draft as many good teams as possible. But before we do, Andrew, what's been your favorite piece of camp hype that you've seen so far?
So, Tom, I'm not sure if you caught the show last week that I did with Debro. Me and Debro drafted a team on Underdog, and there was a lot of talk about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the 7th-round rookie running back for the Washington Commanders, who goes by the name of Bill. For those that aren't aware, he likes to be called Bill, which, hey,
I didn't know
whatever you
that, but
want.
I appreciate it.
He could have gone by JCM, Krosky-Merritt, a lot of cool names, but he decided, nope, keeping it with Bill. But he's been generating a lot of hype out of Commanders camp, and it's not so surprising because he was a player that I think he would have been drafted much earlier had it not been for his eligibility issues. He had a really weird end to his college career as a transfer, and then the NCAA decided that he couldn't play in any more games. So he played one game and he looked pretty good in it. And then he set out the rest of the season. He played in the All-Star game, won All-Star MVP, and then got drafted in the 7th round. So I think that we were concerned about, okay, as a 7th rounder, sometimes these guys aren't even locks to make the team, which is why I think it's okay to be a bit bearish on them early in the offseason because you don't want to draft a guy that's not on a team. But now it seems like, hey, he's clearly in their plans, at least to make the roster and potentially battle Brian Robinson for that A-back role for the Washington Commanders. Now, we know Brian Robinson, he is the incumbent, but we know that he's an average running back. I don't think that he's a super special guy that can't be potentially supplanted by maybe a rookie with more upside, more explosiveness, which has kind of been JCM's calling card during camp is, hey, he's looked like he has the juice that we haven't necessarily seen with Austin Eckler, who's getting up there in age, and Brian Robinson just because of his skill set.
Yeah, the opportunity is massively there for somebody. Like, I really expected the Commanders to put a bit of draft capital in a position because it felt like a worthwhile position for them to chase. Last year, Brian Robinson wasn't bad, but he just had no real ceiling. And then Austin Eckler was better than expected, but still wasn't anything particularly special. So there's definitely opportunity there. I know Dan Graziano of ESPN was giving a little bit of hype to Merritt, or Bill, as we're going to call him. Coming off his big camp report article that he put out this morning. But he also said it's clearly Brian Robinson RB1 for now, Eckler behind him, and then we'll see. So I think that it's a worthwhile shot, particularly if you're looking at best ball teams where you've got 20 rounds, or if you wanted to do something different in fast draft where it's smaller rosters, then it makes sense to take these shots on players who will have the potential to have some upside later on in the offseason. But Andrew, I'm disappointed that you didn't talk about J.J. McCarthy. I don't know if you saw this, but J.J. McCarthy made a pass on air with beautiful anticipation, but I don't think I've ever seen people talk about a pass when there are no defenders and the catch was pretty routine. Yes, there was anticipation, but the internet was broken, Andrew.
Man, the JJ McCarthy discourse has kind of been up and down a little bit. I've heard that it's been like that, where it's been super, super positive. And I've also seen reports where it's been not as glowing for him. I just think I'm just ready to see him in real NFL action. I need to see JJ McCarthy playing real NFL games. And I am kind of curious about how, I don't know if O'Connell has talked about how much he's going to use him or if at all in the preseason. Again, it would make sense where, hey, let's get this guy more reps, but he also got injured in the preseason last year. So it'll be interesting to see how O'Connell approaches it because he's a guy that you definitely want to get more live action. But if guys are not out there, I mean, Jefferson, we know, is banged up with a hamstring injury. You know, he's not going to be playing in any preseason games. So it'll be interesting to see how the Vikings handle this these exhibition contests.
Yeah, we are going to get to the first team in a moment, but first, we've got a few comments in the chat over here on Twitch, and I want to get to those because tonight's show is all about the listeners, and it's time to make sure that we help people as much as possible at this time of year. So, Lefty54 saying Burrow and Tet or CJ and Nico in Dynasty. I mean, we're best ball bros on this show, but my lean there would be Burrow and Tet. Where would you lean on that one, Andrew?
I agree. Yeah, I'll take the youth with Tetero, McMillan, and Burrow. And I mean, Burrow's done it. We're hoping CJ Stroud can be Joe Burrow, but Burrow is him, as the kids like to say.
Yeah, and Burrow as well. I just think you've got that immediate hit because the defense is going to be bad again this year, that we know the pass volume is going to be really high. And then let's move over to our good friend Axel de G, who asked a few weeks ago, asked a lot of the pros, who would they take between Hubbard or Walker? Mo said Kenneth Walker. Do you think that changes now? Now, obviously, Kenneth Walker's missed a bunch of practices recently. It's a foot injury, I believe, but nothing too serious, but it is starting to linger a little bit. And foot injuries, like you and Debro talked about this last week, foot injuries have a habit of being something that can linger. So are you leaning more to Chuba Hubbard now, or are you still on the Kenneth Walker side?
Still think I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker because I think from a points per game perspective, I think he's going to outscore Hubbard. I really do think that just based on his 3-down skill set, I think that, again, both guys were really effective as rushers last season, but I think Walker has the edge when it comes to their receiving usage. So I think Walker is going to be better in points per game. But again, if Walker misses time, which has really been his Achilles heel, no pun intended, I think that Hubbard maybe could you see at the end of the season outscore him in total points? Yeah, it's possible. But at least with Walker in the best ball format, you're having someone else hopefully fill in those zeros for you.
Yeah, my lean's still Kenneth Walker. I think it's one of those situations where everything the Seahawks have done points towards being run heavy, whereas the Panthers have made little moves to try and get the passing game going more. And I like both players, but I just have that slight lean towards Kenneth Walker. And I think if we saw him have more pass volume, which isn't something that he's incapable of, then that could be one of those situations where we really talk about a top 5 running back potential. I don't know. I still hold out hope for that kind of ceiling for Kenneth Walker. We are going to get to our best ball roster reviews in just a second. But first, look, each and every week we're going to be here till the season starts. Myself, Andrew Erickson over there, best ball live streams. Next week is going to be a fantastic show. Myself and Andrew going head to head on FFPC. It's going to be a lot of fun. Every week we're here talking strategy, stacks, sleepers, much more. We're drafting every alternative week. Just get yourself over at twitch.tv/fantasy pros, Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be a lot of fun this month. So, Andrew, let's get into the first of the teams. And we're starting off with one of mine. I got in there first, so I put one of my teams in. And this is FFPC Superflex for contest, which will be drafted in next week. So for anyone unaware, this is also a tight end premium contest. So you really don't want to get left behind at the tight end position. You don't want to get left behind at the quarterback position. And in this draft, I went Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert, Bryce Young at quarterback, Jordan Mason, Najee Harris, Baishal Tootin, Rashad White, Roshan Johnson, Blake Corum, Ty Johnson, Malik Neighbors, Devonta Smith, Juwan Jennings, Jordan Addison. Built out quite a big Chargers stack here with Trey Harris, Quentin Johnston, as well as Aronde Gadsden. I had Adam Thielen stacked with Bryce Young, and then my tight end room, like this is where it comes back to 0.5 additional bonus for the tight ends. Brock Bowers, who I took in round 1, and then I got Sam Laporta a few rounds later. How do you feel I did with this one?
Well, the tight ends really stand out. I mean, it looks like you have not only the tight end 1 potentially, but another guy that's probably going to finish inside the top 5 as well. If Sam Laporta can do what he did during his rookie season. So I think that that's definitely the highlight of your team, and that's taking advantage of the scoring. Now, with the FFPC, did you say, is this cumulative or is this have the same type of playoff structure like the Underdogs of DraftKings?
This is kind of similar playoff structure to Underdog and DraftKings. The finals are a lot smaller. So the final is about 100 people, I believe. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. It's definitely not large. A few years back, I finished 6th overall in this contest. And that year, I believe there was only 80 teams in there. So you don't need to stack in the same way that you might do on Underdog or DraftKings, where you've taken on 1,000 different teams. You don't need quite as much leverage. it's kind of threading the needle between having little stacks or finding ways to construct your team differently, because in Superflex, your teams are going to be more naturally quite different in the final than in a normal one where a lot of the same players can drag teams to the finals.
All right. I think I like, so the quarterbacks, Bryce Young and Adam Thielen. I don't know how much I love. I still feel like Adam Thielen might retire. I feel like that's in the back of my mind. So I'm curious, did you have an opportunity to go with, and I know that they don't profile exactly the same, but I see that you have Bowers, obviously Raiders. You have a lot of Chargers players. Did Geno Smith kind of cross your mind as, okay, we get some correlation with some of these Chargers games? He plays in a dome. I know Bryce Young probably has a little bit more rushing juice, but I think those guys go in a pretty similar situation. Did Geno cross your mind? Again, I don't know when you drafted this team, but that was something that kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, so this team was drafted a couple of weeks ago. So Gino's somebody I do like. I really believe in the Chip Kelly offense. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think Gino's very much underrated this year. So I did take Bryce Young after Gino went already. I would have taken Gino just for the sake of the Brock Bowers stack. Like, if I'm believing in Brock Bowers, I've got to believe in Gino, I kind of think. So yeah, I do agree with that one. In terms of a weakness, for me, Najee Harris, the situation with him now, if I knew what I knew now, would I have drafted him as my RB2? I'm not sure I would. Is there anywhere in this team where you look at and you think, Tom, you're too thin there?
Yeah, the running back thing with Najee, the latest report I think I just saw is that he's walking laps now. So, man,
That's good. That's good. Weighted vest, though. So,
that is just bonkers, man. It's just, the Najee situation is so bizarre because this guy, we were highlighting him and how consistent he is. He rushes for 1,000 yards every single season. He doesn't miss any games, and then all of a sudden he has this crazy fireworks accident. Is going to potentially he's missing time because of an eye injury, which is just crazy, man. Like, the world works in mysterious ways. But yeah, running back, I think anyone that's looking at the roster can see, yes, definitely a little bit lighter because you address the other positions with tight end, obviously receiver. So following more of a traditional zero RB bill. But Jordan Mason, I mean, that's the top guy you have. I mean, he's one of my favorite late round running back
oh,
targets.
I knew you'd like that.
Same thing with Bayshal Tootin. Rashad White is someone that we just draft in best ball drafts every single time.
PPR format.
Because he's just going to score points at full PPR. And then you have RB1 upside if there's an injury to Bucky Irving. It's just a pretty simple bet to make for a player like Rashad White. Obviously a bust last year, but now I think it's kind of, the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction for him and what he can offer as not just a handcuff, but as some standalone value. And I still like, and Blake Corum, I sometimes I want to write him off entirely, but then, he gets positive coach speak. I still don't know what to expect from Blake Corum this year, if anything. But
well, I mean, Axel in the chat saying, do we prefer Corum and Roshan over rookies drafted to their respective teams? And I think that's a great question to bring up. And we are going to get to each and every comment tonight. But like, I'll take Jarquez Hunter ahead of Blake Corum because I think Jarquez Hunter's got that kind of breakaway and the ability to change the game on a dime. But I think if Blake Corum gets in there, we're probably talking about some goal line role. Whereas Roshan, we have no idea. We were chatting about this before. Like, Ben Johnson's done 17 different press conferences since he arrived in Chicago, according to the Coach Speak Index, and nobody has ever asked him about Roshan Johnson. So we don't know what the gap is between him and Kyle Monongai, but Kyle Monongai went in the 17th pick of the 7th round. I'm comfortable betting on Roshan Johnson there.
Yeah, I definitely like Monongai a lot. And unlike Roshan Johnson, he actually has gotten a decent amount of coach speak, especially, I mean, Ben Johnson has dropped the trust word with Kyle Monongai, which is pretty rare for a guy who's taken in the 7th round, who's a rookie, who, again, not a perfect prospect by any way, but I guess to me, he always seemed like a player with a really high floor. And no, he's not this super special running back, but he's going to get you the yards that you need. He's not going to fumble. He's going to pass protect, but he's going to be zero in the passing game. So where Swift, it really feels like his concrete role as that receiver out of the backfield, that feels pretty secure along with anything else that he's going to see. But Monongai, if they really trust him, maybe he's someone that carves out a role near the goal line, where DeAndre Swift really, whatever stop DeAndre Swift has been at, he's never really been a red zone running back. And so that's always why with Swift, I push back a little bit with his ceiling case, because I am concerned about what type of red zone role he will get, even in a Bears offense that we're expecting to be better than last year.
Yeah, look, we're absolutely cooking here on Twitch tonight. Loads of people here, loads in the comments. So I want to get to a bunch of these before we get to your first roster. We've got Regnet Kevin, Ethan Expo, Dreflix, all just following the channel over here on
Woo!
fantasypros.twitch. Make sure you're doing that. We've got Tiki T15, Tactical Potato. Appreciate all of you here. So we're going to try and hit on a bunch of these comments. We've got Tactical Potato asking, is RB heavy the best approach for best ball and redraft 12 man? Andrew?
I don't think so. I'm usually under the impression that you really want to fill out a little bit more with receivers because usually you have to fill
Yeah.
out more of those
Yep.
slots. And in this year in particular, we know that the rookie running back class is going to be good. So you're going to see a lot of these rookie running backs well outperform their average draft position. And those are where you want to be taking your shots. You want to be taking running backs
Yeah.
in later rounds in a quantity versus the receivers where you're just the odds of you hitting on some of these late round receivers, it's just the odds of them hitting are just so substantially less than hitting on a running back because you just need one injury and boom, like your running back is relevant. Whereas receivers, even if they get the opportunity, then they also have to be good. Running backs, like we've seen, if they just get volume, they can usually just make their way into some type of production, even if they're not that good. Again, going back to Kyle Monangai, I don't think that he's this super dynamic, special running back, but if he gets volume in a Bears offense that's pretty good, he's going to score fantasy points where it won't be the same necessarily for receivers or even some of these tight ends that you're getting really late.
Yeah, like last year was the year to go running back heavy, and people did it at the lowest rate. Like through 4 rounds, teams with 3 running backs on them made up 2% of the best ball mania field last year. And that was the lowest rate in the past 5-6 years. Like it'd been steadily going down. And it was the year where it worked out best. Now, what happened with those teams as well is that they got teams to the best ball playoffs. But then when we got there, Saquon Barkley had a bit of a down week. There were other running backs who had bits of down weeks. So it didn't end up winning people lots of money. So there's a lot of threading the needle you've got to do. For me, I think this sets up for a hero RB year. I think it sets up probably well for a dual running back year. But I'm not going running back heavy in the majority of drafts. I think I'm in a draft over on Sleeper at the minute where I have taken 4 running backs in a row to start the draft just to see what it would look like. But generally speaking, if you go running back heavy, the quality of your wide receiver 2 is going to be substantially difficult to kind of get the top end like that we would like. And even though there are nice guys in the kind of pick 120 range, guys like Rashad Bateman, guys like Jacoby Myers, I'm not sure that we want to be relying on them, which is what we might be doing if we go RB heavy. And the other downside to RB heavy starts is you're catching up at wide receiver so much that it then becomes difficult to scoop any value on quarterback or tight end. Tricky T15, 12 team PPR. I have the 6th pick. Who should I be hoping falls to me? Well, Tricky, handily for you, I write a series on Fantasy Pros called How to Draft from the 101, the 102, the 106, all of those positions. And one thing that has surprised me a little is how much Christian McCaffrey has been pushed up to this range over the last few weeks. So I think that you can probably see Christian McCaffrey in there. You might see Jahmyr Gibbs falling down that far. I know some industry experts are pushing Jahmyr Gibbs RB1 season. You'll probably have a choice of Ashton Genty. There'll be Puka Nakua. There'll be Malik Neighbors. This kind of comes down to your scoring format, what your league is like. If you play in a really running back heavy league, then you might want to just snatch one of those top, second tier running backs. A guy like Christian McCaffrey, if you're willing to shoot for upside, could be a lot of fun. But I find it hard to pass Ashton Genty. Andrew, where do you land at the 106?
Man, this is definitely one of my least favorite slots to draft from because of how deep round 1 feels this year. And I feel pretty confident with my top 4 guys, which is between Chase, Bijan, Gibbs, and CeeDee Lamb. And then after those 4 is where, and I guess kind of Jefferson probably falls at number 5 for me. I do have, some reservations just about, hey, it's a new quarterback. I know he did it last year and because Justin Jefferson's just so good, but now he's got this hamstring injury, just things that because round 1 is so good, I am looking for things to break ties. And those things with Jefferson that are going on about his situation, well, that matters to me, especially with the round 1 so loaded. So Tricky T15, I feel for you here having the 6th pick because if Jefferson's there, you think, man, this is a layup, right? I just got to take Justin Jefferson, and maybe it is, assuming that he's all healthy and good to go. So I think Jefferson still I would take over CMC. Again, if we're playing the injury game, I'm taking Jefferson over Chris
Yeah.
McCaffrey. I'm not thinking twice about that. But I would say I think that you're gonna like your team probably a little bit better if you go with the running back first here and instead of the receiver, because I think you're going to see some receivers still available to you on the back end when you pick in round 2. It's weird this year that I kind of think about who am I going to draft in round 2 in accordance to who I'm going to approach the beginning of round 1, because I really feel it is a long tier that stems into, because with him
it's
picking
like the
6,
first 18 picks or so, isn't it? That are
there-
really nice.
there are so many players. I think that we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Tom, where Brock Bowers some years would be a locked and loaded first round pick, but he's just not this year because of how good the first round. Not that he's not worthy of being a first round pick, and he could be potentially a target here if you're picking at the back end of round 2 after picking 6. That I went with running back, now I can grab Brock Bowers at the end of or middle of round 2.
Yeah, look, the comments are going absolutely wild tonight, and we're going to come back to them and get each and every single one that's in there tonight before we leave. But this is what we do. We're here each and every week on Twitch. It's not just myself and Andrew over here on Twitch. We're here Mondays, Tuesdays, Seth, Debro, taking all your questions, giving you all their thoughts. And then Wednesday as well at 2 p.m. Eastern, you get Seth and Debro back for a second serving. Thursday, we've got a whole host of people who come through. And then Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, you'll know all the faces, you'll know all the voices, and you'll definitely have read their work. So make sure you are following us on Twitch. We are absolutely crushing it over here. So, Andrew, speaking of crushing it, let's see your first best ball roster. So this one's from the Fast Draft app, right? Which is a platform I've not been able to play on, but I know you really like it. And this is a platform which seems to be growing quickly because the drafts are really quick, and that seems to appeal to a lot of people. Break down this roster for us.
Yeah, so this is from Fast Draft's Rabbit Tournament, which is a 15-man roster, I believe, if I'm doing my math correctly. I believe it's 15 rounds, so plays around like 20 minutes. It's a quick clock, and it's unique because it's one quarterback, one tight end. You start 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and then 2 flex spots. So unlike a lot of the best ball drafts that we've done where you're starting usually more receivers, this one is not as dependent on that. So you can kind of, the way I would approach this one is you can kind of overload one position really early on and then fill out the rest of the other positions with quantity over quality, because technically you only have to start 2 running backs every week, or you could start 2 wide receivers every week. And then it's just up to your flex spot. And as you'll notice here as well, I only have 1 tight end. So I just went with the hero tight end with Brock Bowers. I'm going to take during Bowers' bye week, I'm going to take a 0, but this allowed me access to another running back or wide receiver. So I think that this is maybe a little bit tougher to do in some of these 20-round best ball drafts or 18-round best ball drafts. But for this one, I felt, you know what? I feel like it's going to hurt me less if I just take 1 week where I don't get that many points. I'm going to invest in another running back or wide receiver, because this is also cumulative scoring. So it's not, that's the way it's a little bit different as well. So maybe Tom disagrees with that approach. This was the first one I did. I was like, I'm just going to go Bowers and then I'll think about it later. Did I make a big mistake? Besides that, again, just drafting a lot of, again, with a hero RB build, going with Gibbs in round 1, and then just kind of hitting on some of these later round running backs that I like, Dobbins, Rashad White, and Jordan Mason. We're hand-holding on 2 of the same running backs, Tom, that we drafted on the same teams with Mason and Bayshore and Rashad White.
Yeah, so I can't exactly slate this team too much, but what I do think is that I think I probably would have taken the second tight end. Like, I haven't played in this format, but over on Drafters, giving up any kind of potential score each week in the cumulative format, it can just be tricky to make it back. Now, I will say that Brock Bowers is the kind of tight end who can make up for that, because his ceiling is so high and his ability to score is so much better than just about any other tight end out there, that it will be a little... You'd like to think that Brock Bowers is going to create a distance between other teams, but I think that looking at Keon Coleman, Michael Pittman, maybe J.K. Dobbins, probably one of those guys I would have sacrificed for another tight end. But on the whole, I can't hate on it. Like, you've got Patrick Mahomes stacked with Xavier Worthy. You've got Justin Fields stacked with Garrett Wilson. There's a lot of fun here, and I love your approach of just hammering the wide receiver position through those kind of first 6-7 rounds and really creating not just a strength, but creating a really strong strength. So yeah, this one feels like a lot of fun. Appreciate a lot of the people in the here chatting for the first time tonight. So let's go back to the comments, and then we'll hit on one of my teams and one of yours quite quickly before we move on to some of the listeners. Way back up towards the top, Axel the G saying, does the comments Tyreek made on Devon Achan and response by Mike McDaniels affect his value in your perspective? Not for me, Andrew. I mean, this one's quite quick. I just think Tyreek Hill does these kind of things. There's probably a limited runway for how much he can do this without really annoying his teammates and the people that he plays with. But this is just Tyreek Hill, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just Tyreek Hill. I mean, didn't he also say that this is the first time he's understood the offense and in the 3 years that he's been on the team, right? So Tyreek's doing a lot of talking. He's doing a lot of track running. Let's get him. I want to see him on the football field, man. Like, come on, like, buckle down. Let's get onto the football field. And look, I'm not the highest on Tyreek this year. I think that what we saw last year was real. He's an aging receiver. He's going to be 31 this year, and that's why, again, even on this team that I drafted Jaylen Waddle in round 7. I think Waddle is going to be a value. I think that he's going to be the leading receiver for the Dolphins this year. I really think that he's younger. He's significantly younger. He's been really efficient in this offense before. And if anything, all of the vibes around Tyreek, rebuilding his relationship with Tua, it hasn't been glowing. Whereas Waddle, the vibes around him have been, he's stepped up as a leader in this offense. Like, he's the one that's
got a really good relationship.
Yeah. Who is Tua having brunch with, guys? Is it Tyreek Hill or is it Jaylen Waddle? Come on, let me know in the comments. Where are they eating breakfast? Who is it eating with? What are they having? Let me know.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's move on to, I'm going to guess this one is Mercked. When drafting in the underdog weekly winners, does your strategy change at all? I find myself going more balanced than zero RB. Curious about your thoughts. For me, the weekly winners contest, for anybody unfamiliar with it, is a contest where each and every week you have the potential to win the jackpot for that week. And then the next week, it just resets to zero. It is basically a 17-game DFS season where each week you're looking for upside. Some people like to heavily stack with certain weeks in mind. Some people build rosters, avoiding certain sections of the calendar. Now, for me, I'm not sure that I want to go zero RB over there, because if you think about DFS lineups that you're building throughout the season, it's not often that you're building DFS lineups where you completely punt the running back position. More often, you might be going, okay, I've got my locked in hero RB, and now I'm going to look down and tier down and find some real value at one of the running back positions. And then I'm going to build out my game stacks around it. So that's kind of a mentality I've had towards the weekly winners competition. Andrew, I don't know how much you've drafted in that. Is that something that you would go with, or would you take a different approach there?
So I haven't done any weekly winners this year. I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago that I did a lot of it. I think it was when it first launched. And I don't know how much success I had with this strategy, but I thought that it was fun going in. I looked at what weeks had the most bye weeks, and I drafted the most players playing on the teams with the most bye weeks, trying to basically monopolize. Okay, I just want to win week 6. Like that is my goal, or whatever week has the most bye weeks, because, okay, that means every other team is going to have potentially holes on their roster because there are less teams playing. And if I basically monopolize the week 7 market of all of the marquee games, especially earlier on the season when we know a little bit more about the rosters and how they may shake out, again, not factoring in like bad weather or anything like that. That was my approach. And I don't think I'd have to go back and see how those rosters did in particular, but that was something that I thought of as a strategy that could kind of work. Now, obviously, you were really banking on that 1 week really hitting for you and kind of saving your bacon, because you're probably going to be dead most other weeks, except for that one that you're really going all in on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's a fun contest, so there's plenty of strategy that you can get involved in. I know there's some really good conversations out there. We're going to take one more question, and then we are going to get to the listener ones. We're going to skip over mine and Andrew's other teams. We need to get to the ones that really matter, the people's ones. So Tricky T15 saying, would it be dumb to stack Gibbs and Montgomery together? I don't think it's dumb. I think that every now and again we get these running backs where, it's kind of Devonta Freeman, Tevin Coleman, those situations where they can have combined outputs that make it worth drafting the same running backs on the same team. It's not something I would do in redraft, but I can understand it. It's just, what's the opportunity cost? Which players are you passing on to secure this two-headed backfield? Because we've definitely seen plenty of weeks where they can both be really relevant, but I definitely wouldn't be adding on any more Lions pass catchers to that team. I'd be saying the running backs are going to score the majority of points, and that's where I'm pushing my chips in. Andrew, how do you feel about this one?
I don't think it's ever dumb to stack teammates. I really don't think. The way that the correlation works, when one offense is hit, you see multiple guys go along the way, and then you have the outs of, I know that Gibbs is the upside play. We think about how he could be LaDainian Tomlinson whenever Dave Montgomery misses time. Well, there is the reverse of that too, where if Gibbs misses any time, well, Dave Montgomery's going to look really dumb for falling into the round 7 or round 8 of a lot of these drafts. So I think too, to make the point for Tricky T15 is, we do see Montgomery fall sometimes because of the narrative. If the Lions offense is worse, and I'm buying into that a little bit, he does fall to a point where sometimes it's just, hey, this is a really good value for Dave Montgomery. If the Lions offense is, it's just top 10 now. It's not the number 1 scoring offense in the NFL anymore. But if you're still a hammer on a top 10 offense that's going to still have, it's not like the Lions are never going to play with a lead ever again. Like, they're going to have leads at some point. So I don't think it's dumb at all. I don't think it's ever dumb, honestly, to stack teammates.
Yeah. I think, that kind of level of correlation makes sense. And it's not something we want to heavily approach in redraft, but in best ball, the system's going to sort it out for us. And I'm completely fine with it. Look, we're going to get to as many of your questions as we possibly can tonight, but help us out whilst you're here. All you got to do is hit that follow, hit that subscribe button over on Twitch. We have so much content over here, and we want to keep bringing you more and more content over here on Twitch. So whilst you're here, make sure you drop comments in. Give me and Andrew as many questions as you like, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. And when you support the channel, you'll be able to watch us ad-free. So consider subscribing. It really does keep these going. Producer Seth, hit us with the next team, and let's see what we've got from the listeners. So this one is a fun team. Bo Nix at quarterback. We see stacked with Cortland Sutton and Evan Ingram. And then in there, we've got Chase Brown. We've got Kenneth Walker, a guy that we've obviously already talked about tonight. We've got Jamar Chase. We've got Caleb Johnson, Emeka Egbuka, Drake May stacked with Hunter Henry. And then towards the end, a couple of dart throws on kind of Jackson Dart and Terrence Ferguson. Andrew, what are your first thoughts when you look at this team? And I will find out who it's from.
I wish this was a team that I drafted. That's what I can say. I think this is a really good team. I like this it a lot.
This one's from Axel in the Discord. So
yes.
Yeah, Axel, this is DraftKings King of the Desert competition.
Yes, I like this team a lot, going from the top with the Denver correlation between Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton. I believe there was another. Is there another Denver piece here? Oh, Evan Ingram. Right. So you got the Broncos double stack with 2 of their, I think, locked and loaded pass catchers, going with Jamar Chase, the 101, stacking him with Chase Brown, who I think is just going to be a monster bell cow. They didn't go running back super early here with Chase Brown and Ken Walker, but those are some of my favorite guys at their respective ADPs in that range, especially in the full PPR. AJ Brown, another stud receiver. I love Caleb Johnson, the flex. Drake May. This is an Andrew Erickson approved draft. So I talked about the front end guys. I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on some of those back end guys.
Yeah, my only kind of thought with this one is, did we need Jackson Dart? Because obviously we're not putting Jackson Dart stacked with Malik Neighbors. We've not got, if I was taking Jackson Dart, would I have added Darius Slayton or someone like that to the mix to try and build out an additional stack? And then Terrence Ferguson, again, it's a good pick. And I think, look, 3 tight end builds have worked really well on DraftKings, so I'm not heavily against this in any way, but I just kind of wonder if there was a way to get a little bit more correlation, a little bit more of a bonus towards stacking. There's not really any week 17 correlation on this team. The Broncos play the Chiefs in week 17. We've got the Patriots are playing, is it the Jets in week 17? And the contests over on DraftKings, when you're going into the finals, sometimes you do need that kind of 1 week DFS mindset for week 17 to give yourself leverage upon the field. Now, this contest for King of the Desert stuff, the finals do tend to be pretty small, so maybe this team could get by without it. But on the whole, I love this team. I love the way that the running backs were spread out with how they took their picks, like you say. And I think that Chase Brown and Kenneth Walker have the potential to be two of the most undervalued running backs in the top 50 this year. So how can I not like that? The build with Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, it's something we touched on before. We like both those players, so it's an interesting one. I haven't seen many teams doing that. And then Woody Marks, I put a video out on my channel, the Fantasy Sanctuary, recently, where we were talking about Woody Marks having the potential to be one of the best late round picks out there. So yeah, I like this one. Let's go to our next one, which is a team from Toodles. We'll go over to Underdog for that one. Now, this is a 2-8-6-2 build, so a little bit unusual. Drake May, Geno Smith, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Caleb Johnson, Cam Scotterbo, Isaac Guerrero, Baishal Tootin, Marshawn Lloyd, Justice Hill, Justin Jefferson, Cortland Sutton, Devonta Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Josh Palmer, Tyler Lockett, Travis Kelce, and Zach Ertz. Andrew, what are your thoughts?
My first initial thought is, so like you said, the 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends. So more of a unique build there, especially based on the players that they selected, right? When you usually go 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends, usually you're investing more draft capital into those positions than this person did here, between Drake May being outside the top 100, pick 118, and Travis Kelce being 94. So that does give me concern about when we're weeks 15, 16, 17, is Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz going to be on a tear at those times? Those guys seem like very early season production type of players, where they're going to probably tail off in the second half of the season just because of their age and how their teams deploy them. So that would be my concern. Now, quarterbacks, I wouldn't say I was as concerned for that, just because Drake May's a young quarterback and he can really hit his stride. And because he has that rushing ability, I think that he could technically, have a week of games, or a couple of weeks of games where he could be putting up top 5 fantasy production. So I think tight end's probably the one that I would nitpick the most. Whereas I like Drake May, I like Geno. Maybe it's not the best quarterback when you look at it now, but after the season, those guys were both fringe top 10. Those were really good value propositions. Whereas tight end, I think I'd probably want a little bit more firepower, either with another guy or drafting someone earlier than Kelce.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing that stood out to me is, okay, I think that the 8 running back build is interesting, but I would have sacrificed Justice Hill for a third tight end, whether that was somebody, and we go back to Axel's team, someone like Terrence Ferguson, who could give you a little bit of juice potentially down the stretch, or an Aronde Gadsden or Elijah Arroyo, one of those kind of interesting players. And look, if Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz hit, then you're talking about 2 potential volume monsters, and that's completely fine. But when you've got Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor in your first 2 rounds or 3 rounds or so, then you're really committing to them being worthwhile. I generally wouldn't get to 8 running backs unless I was doing a 0 RB build or a hero RB build where I hadn't got back to the running back position until sort of pick 100 onwards. Whereas here, we do have draft capital allocated to the running back position earlier. And Mike Leone, one of the smartest people around, always says, you can draft running backs early, or you can draft a lot of running backs. You can't do both. And it's that kind of idea of just trying to allocate your draft capital in a way that spreads things in a decent way. So yeah, I don't dislike the team. I think that there's some interesting stuff. I probably would have prioritized adding a stack somewhere. There's no stacking, not much like that stands out for week 17 correlation. So I like the build, and I think that getting weird with your build can be enough sometimes to give you some leverage, but it's possibly not how I would have completed a draft. Let's go over one that's probably going to sing a little bit more to my heart. It is a 0 RB build on DraftKings from Bradley, submitted in the Discord. If you guys want your teams on these shows, or you want me and Andrew to give you feedback on them, just drop them in the Discord, tag us, we'll get to them. This one is a 3-6-9-2 build. So we've got Dak Prescott stacked with George Pickens, Jalen Tolbert. We've got Garrett Wilson stacked with Justin Fields. And then we've got a big Rams stack of Matthew Stafford, Tutu Atwell, Terrence Ferguson, and Devontae Adams up top. And you look at this team started Amon-Ra St. Brown, Malik Neighbors, Garrett Wilson, and Devontae Adams with the first 4 picks. Like I am a 0 RB slappy. So this one sings to me. Andrew, do you like it? Do you feel like it got enough out of a running back room to make up for it?
I do like the running backs that they selected with the 0 RB approach. Again, going RJ Harvey, getting that youth upside. Okay, Tony Pollard, he can be the player that provide some early season production while Harvey gets up to speed before he kind of develops into his role. Tyrone Tracy, another player that, yes, maybe he has a role with Cam Scadaboo, who's also kind of dealing with some injury as of right now. So I do think those are kind of interesting. I did want to ask you a question, though, Tom, about they didn't go. So I know you've done with the research with the 0 RB. They didn't go elite quarterback or elite tight end. Is that something that you would change instead of them going with all those top end wide receivers? I mean, you have George Pickens on the bench right now. When you go with those 5 receivers essentially to start, you're missing out on an elite quarterback or elite tight end. Not to say that Dak Prescott can't be an elite passer, but without the rushing, he's probably not going to be anywhere near the top 5. And Tucker Kraft, I absolutely love him, but you're still missing an opportunity to draft Bowers, McBride, or a George Kittle, who I think definitely project just a little bit better, at least preseason.
Yeah, I can definitely see your point, and it's tricky because we've only got the roster. We didn't see the draft board. They could have been looking to add an elite quarterback or an elite tight end, and that is kind of a priority for me. Like, and we've talked about it when we've drafted 0 RB teams. It is about not just building a super wide receiver room, that's part of it, but it's also building a super team across everywhere apart from running back room, and then building out the running back room in a way that's going to make up for it and potentially have the upside as the season goes on. So I definitely tend to prioritize those kind of builds where I've got at least one elite tight end or one elite quarterback when I go 0 RB. But every now and again, it's just really fun to just take like 5 wide receivers in a row, man. Like, George Pickens, and like, so on DraftKings, we're starting 3 wide receivers. Then we've got 1 in the flex every week. So having 1 on your bench just means that that you're going to be able to fill the flex. You're going to be able to fill the wide receiver position with elite talent potentially every single week. I do think Dak Prescott is going heavily undervalued this year, so that makes me feel better about him. The Matthew Stafford pick, obviously, probably looked a little bit better maybe a week ago or so, but I still think that when the games are being played, we'll be all right. And then Justin Fields, you can make the argument that Justin Fields is the elite fantasy producer, like QB6 last year, averaging 38 yards per game, 2 games where he had multi-rushing touchdowns. And maybe he's just being undervalued because he's not necessarily a particularly good passer. Would I prefer if he was a good passer? Yes, I would. So yeah, I think it's a really good question to ask. Could we maybe have flipped that? But otherwise, there's very little about this team that I would change. Like, if you want to get into more of the strategy around 0 RB, check out Fantasy Pros Best Ball Draft Kit. It is all live on the site. It has been there for weeks now. And honestly, the strategy articles around roster construction, I look forward to writing them each and every year. I put huge amounts of research into them. There's so much data out there across the years. Every year changes so much, but there are little trends that we see. So I would highly recommend anybody wanting to dive in more to this, go to fantasypros.com/bestball. Let's get to one more team, and then we are coming back to the chat. So if you've got questions, make sure you put them in now. This is Tim from the Discord. He said this was in the Underdog Corgi competition, which was a single entry. So we have got Jayden Daniels, Kyler Murray at quarterback. The running back room is very much a fun one. This got CMC, Chase Brown, Trevion Henderson, Zach Charbonnet, Austin Eckler, of course, stacking up with Jayden Daniels. And really, the main thing that stuck out to me was, okay, we've got Jayden Daniels, we've got him with Austin Eckler, Noah Brown, and Zach Ertz. But we've got Kyler Murray on his own. Do you think that Kyler Murray gives us enough with his feet that we don't need to worry about stacking him?
I don't know about that. I think that because most of the other Kyler Murray teams are going to have McBride or Marvin Harrison Jr. on them. I would say the vast majority of other teams in this single entry tournament will have them. So is there a scenario where Murray can go bonkers during the playoff weeks without one of those guys? I don't know if that happens. So for me, maybe it's not that big a deal because you have Daniels and you're hoping that he's going to be the guy that's going to be the driver, whereas Murray, maybe it looks like he fell a little bit. He got him out at pick 104. He doesn't overlap with bye weeks. So I don't think that it's the biggest deal in the world because it seems like this person was really focused on Jayden Daniels, getting that commander stack. I kind of like that fact that they did Daniels without McLaurin. This is like an anti-McLaurin bet. It's just like draft everybody, Noah Brown, Eckler, draft everybody except Terry McLaurin. And if this contract thing he holds out, he gets traded, then you could look like a genius. I mean, Noah Brown, I keep forgetting that because he had this weird injury during OTAs.
Yeah,
And
and
we
he's
didn't get a
still
lot of
banged up.
we didn't get a lot of information about it, but I mean, he had his moments last year where he was going toe for toe with Terry
Have you
McLaurin when it
to
came
league
to
winner?
yeah. So I think that Brown, I mean, I don't want to go as far as saying he could be this year's Juwan Jennings, but some player that has kind of been really forgotten about that. Hey, he's attached to Jayden Daniels as an ascending passer in year 2. And yeah, they have a couple interesting young players, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, but Noah Brown, Dan Quinn knows him. Jayden Daniels knows him. He's been in this offense before. I mean, he could really step up, especially as a player during those playoff weeks as a big play specialist. So I like him as a cheap, underrated stack, especially in single entry where Noah Brown probably wasn't getting drafted that very often.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And I think it's worth mentioning that while Kyler Murray isn't stacked with anyone, he does get the Week 17 correlation with Chase Brown, which could be a difference maker. You know, you've got that. Christian McCaffrey is an interesting one because today we got the news that Isaac Guerrero could miss a few weeks. So much of the offseason conversation has been around Christian McCaffrey. Can he stay healthy? Will he be healthy? And how much value is Isaac Guerrero going to bring? And now we're seeing the flip side of that of going, okay, well, did anybody worry about the backup running back? So I mean, that's interesting. In general, this feels like a fun team. 2583 is a fun build, and I think that the pick allocation towards the running backs is really nicely done. You know, you can see pick 8, pick 32, pick 65, pick 113, and pick 161. There was no point where they were chasing the running back room. Punted tight end down to 137, and then this is a tight end build that I really like. Look, I mean, we've talked about Colson Loveland plenty. I put out a video on my channel talking about how I think that the rookie tight ends being undervalued, and we've both kind of come to that conclusion. Colson Loveland lighting up training camp, I would expect his ADP to be rising, and then pairing him with Zach Ertz for the stack, and then taking another swing on Jatavian Sanders. I really like this build. I think it works really well. So lots of fun there. We're going to hit one more team, and then we're going to spend the last 10 minutes that we are live today answering as many of your questions as possible. We've got a bunch of people who are throwing in more comments here. Lethal Poots, first-time chatter, as well as Dreflix. Appreciate you. Dreflix, I know that was your team before, and hopefully we didn't come down too harsh on it. It just... best ball's so subjective. There's certain teams that you look at and you just go, I wouldn't draft quite like that. And then there are other teams where you look at them and you just go, yep, that's exactly how I like to draft. So
I would love to do what I think would be a fun thing to do is look through some of your best ball teams and trying to project, okay, this is the best team that I think is going to be the highest scoring before the season. And then revisiting that team and seeing how, like, did you make the right projection? Was it like, oh, this team was end up really good? And just kind of, because again, like you said, it is so subjective looking at these teams before the season plays out. Again, we're trying to like look at the builds essentially because everyone has different player takes. But yeah, that'd be fascinating to see like, oh, this is my number one best ball team pre-draft or preseason, and then see how it ends up shaking out.
Yeah, and I really love doing these kind of roster reviews as well because it definitely does push you into thinking about things differently. Like that 8 running back room that we looked at before, that's not something I would do, but I'm very guilty of falling into certain pockets of drafting going, I like 4 wide receivers by the time I hit round 7. I want 2 quarterbacks by the time I hit this point. I want this correlation, but what am I missing when I take those ones? So it's always interesting to have these conversations. This is a underdog team from Coltrane, another one of the submissions on the Discord, 2583. Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud at quarterback. Then the running back room, Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs, James Cook, Javonte Williams, Rashad White. At wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb stacked up with Dak Prescott. Then we've got Devonta Smith, Jordan Addison, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen McMillan, Alec Pierce, Darius Slayton, Yoshivas. And then at tight end, we've got, I mean, this is singing to me like Mark Andrews and Tucker Kraft. Let's go. And then Dalton Schultz stacked with CJ Stroud. How do you feel about this one, Andrew?
I really wish that we had a Texans wide receiver in here. Like that's like the one thing that this team is just begging for. I know we have Dalton Schultz, but I don't have a lot of confidence in Schultz because they talk up every other tight end. D'Amico Ryans has talked up Cade Stover. Brevin Jordan is still on that team. It is someone that I think before he got injured last year was eating into, maybe that was 2 years ago. I don't even remember at this point, but eating into Dalton Schultz snaps and targets in the offense. So I'm glad that they did add Schultz as a stack late to get somebody with CJ Stroud, but man, I would have loved this team just a little bit more if they had Jalen Noel or Higgins or even Kirk, just somebody else, because it's really hard to envision CJ Stroud having that week with Dalton Schultz being his guy. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Week 17, Dalton Schultz catches 3 touchdowns from CJ Stroud, and I'm going to be wearing the clown on my face. But that's one thing that I noticed just looking at the quarterbacks and some of the stacking.
Yeah, so I mean, CJ Stroud it's a really interesting point because CJ Stroud just hasn't really displayed that much ceiling. You know, you go back to his rookie season and he was only responsible for 2 of the top 100 quarterback scores across the entire season that year. And then last year, he was being drafted with a top 60 pick, finishes QB 19 after 17 healthy games. Like, it was not good at all. The ceiling just hasn't been there. And I think that we do look at him as a supremely talented player, but I think he's the kind of prototypical quarterback that I want to double stack or triple stack and say that if he's getting there, if he's what I need, then I'm going to need him to bring along a bunch of his teammates with him. And we know CJ Stroud can get hot, but I probably would have gone, like you said, with Jalen Noel, if possible, or one of those kind of guys, or, you know, somebody maybe slightly earlier, like Christian Kirk or Jayden Higgins.
I mean, when you look at the range, because they took Alec Pierce 180 or 170, they took Alec Pierce 172, Darius Slayton 189, Andre Yoshivas 213, and I don't think any of those guys are stacked, right? Even in week 17, I'm not seeing a lot of correlation. No. So it's, I mean, maybe Noel got taken like really aggressively by somebody. That's totally possible. And you just were kind of out of luck at that point. You were just taking some shots on some deep threat guys. Yeah, that's my only nitpick. Again, like you said, Tucker Kraft, love that. Love to see that.
And it's entirely possible that somewhere else there's somebody who's got the roster that has all that week 17 correlation with the Chargers. You know, they drafted Justin Herbert, they drafted Lad McConkey, and then they went and got Jalen Noel, they got Jayden Higgins, and they feel great about it. So I don't want to knock this too much. I think that this is going to be a team that's reliant on Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. And I like the pick allocation. I like where most of the picks were made, and CJ Stroud looks a bit like it was a backdoor stack. It was going, okay, well, I need a second quarterback here. What can I do to add to it? And I don't think it was a terrible job whatsoever. I like this one, and I would say good luck with this one because there is plenty of fun stuff on that team, Coltrane. Right, Andrew, are you ready? We're going to hit as many comments as possible for the last 7 or 8 minutes of this show tonight. If you're in the chat, if you're here over on Twitch with us, make sure that you get any last questions in before we get too far into this. Right, Seth, I'm going to hand it over to producer Steph. You just hit me with questions and we'll go and we'll roll through them. What's our first question? Alex the G, how do you feel about drafting Judkins and or Sampson in general right now? For me, I'm kind of holding off a bit more on Judkins. I've dropped him down my rankings. I'm waiting to see where the floor bottoms out. I just don't really want to bet on a rookie with all this going on. He still hasn't signed his contract yet. But Sampson feels like he could be worth even more than he is right now. Andrew?
Yeah, I'm in on Sampson, out on Judkins. Look, every rookie running back, especially the top guys, they all were not going to hit. So maybe this is just the clear path that this is the one that's not going to hit. So let's just avoid him. Yeah, take the value on Sampson.
Yeah, and also I'd just say Jerome Ford is worth drafting, particularly if you're looking at guys like Trevion Henderson, if you're looking at guys who are going to just take a little bit of time to establish a role as a rookie. Jerome Ford could be a really good pairing for them. Seth, over to the next one. My league drafts RB 0.5 per 12 man. How many wide receivers do I grab before running backs when they fly off the board? Because I get stacked wide receivers, then bad running backs, because most guys are drafting 2 to 3 running backs in a row. Yeah, I love this question from Coltrane. Like, how much can you afford to pivot in drafts, Andrew? Would you be willing to go against the running back avalanche to try and just build yourself a super team of wide receivers?
I think I'd still probably want to follow a hero RB approach. Still try to grab at least one guy that I feel pretty confident about and then pivot to the other receivers. It's when I'm going running back. You know, we're through 4 rounds and I have 3 running backs. That's where I'm cool. I don't want to do that. I want to get one running back who I think could be a league winner or legendary upside, one of those guys that fits into those categories, and then just pound away at the receiver position.
Yeah, and this year is a case of, can you go double wide receiver and then look to get a guy like Breece Hall in the third round? Can you look to get a guy like Kenneth Walker to be your late hero running back? So I think I'd probably fall into that approach as well. Let's move on to the next one. What's your favorite stack overall and favorite stack at cost, aka cheap one? So Andrew, we've been talking best ball for months now, and one of the teams that we talked about early on, it was the Titans. Cam Ward, Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley starting to pick up a little bit of hype, starting to talk about how he could see a real lot of volume. Cam Ward reports on him out of training camp have been really good. So I'm still going back to that. I know Calvin Ridley missed a couple of games recently, but a couple of practices recently, but I'm still willing to keep drafting.
That is an excellent pick. I'm going to go with Jordan Love and any Matthew Golden, Jayden Reed, Tucker Kraft. Those guys are all really, really cheap. I think that they're all way more talented than their ADP suggests. And Jordan Love is just, 1 year removed from over 30 passing touchdowns. I just don't think he was healthy at all last year. So I think when we're looking back at the 2025 season, oh, wow, Jordan Love threw for 35 touchdowns, 4,500 yards. Nobody was surprised, but he was discounted just because last year he got banged up. They were so heavily reliant on the run. I think Jordan Love is someone that I'm always looking for. And the other guy we mentioned too, Trevor Lawrence. Those two Jags receivers, if they hit in any way, Trevor Lawrence is coming for the ride. Like he has to be better with Liam Cohen.
Yeah, I put out a video over the weekend talking about some of my favorite pick'em lines. Trevor Lawrence over 22.5 touchdowns this year. He's only been over that point once. But if we really expect Trevor Lawrence to be struggling to score touchdowns, surely Travis Hunter's going to be out there on offense as well. And I think that he's absolutely going to benefit from that offense this year. And I'm very much in on Trevor Lawrence as well. Seth, let's hit the next question. We got 3 or 4 minutes before we're going to get out of here. We need to turbo some of these. Keeper league, 6th pick. My keeper is Trey McBride in the 4th. Should I trade a 4th round pick for Bijan in the 1st? Yes. Might be missing something there, but that seems completely fine. Let's move on to the next one, Seth. With the current events around AJ Brown and McLaurin, I see them falling in best ball drafts. Is it time to buy the dip or avoid those wide receivers? From Axel, I think that you can probably split this one a little bit. Terry McLaurin, you can get a little bit of exposure to him. If you weren't drafting him, now probably is the right time, because before he was being inflated because he scored so many touchdowns last year. Touchdowns tend not to be sticky, but I'd take a little bit from him right now. AJ Brown, I don't have a problem with AJ Brown's ADP at all, and particularly if you're fading Saquon because you're worried about his efficiency levels this year, coming off so many touches last year. Then drafting AJ Brown just makes too much sense in general.
Tom, you said it the best I could. So, next question.
10-man PPR, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 2 flex. I have the 102 pick and have been considering going with 2 tight ends at the 209 and 302 if I take Bijan at 102. Should I avoid this strategy if it presents itself? Andrew, would you go bully tight end there?
I don't think so. I can't remember a time where bully tight end ever worked out. I did it one time. I drafted Travis Kelce and OJ Howard, and it was absolutely terrible.
Well, I think that there's part of the problem there. And
yes.
It might just have been something to do with OJ Howard. But so Trey McBride, I'm going to say, is slightly better than OJ Howard with the evidence we've got. Maybe, he doesn't score as many touchdowns, perhaps, but I think that it's tough, the opportunity cost, unless you've got a really good tight end bonus, then I'm not doing this, particularly in a 10-man league. I'm not sure that I would be willing to. But look, man, if this feels fun to you and you want to, if you believe that it can give you an advantage in your league, absolutely go and do it, Lethal Boots, because this is the kind of stuff that makes fantasy football fun. Doing stuff like this, watching how your draft room reacts to you on draft day will be fantastic. So do what you feels right. But me and Andrew are probably slightly down on it. Seth, let's move over to the next one. Oh, Ghosty, I have the 8-10 pick in a half PPR. Do you think it's worth reaching for Genty if available at pick 8, or is it smarter to wait for Henry Jacobs on the turn and take a top wide out at 8? So 10-team league, half PPR, Andrew.
Yeah, so this is a great question, because this is something that a lot of people are going to be battling with. When you're picking at the back of round 1, which position do you go to? You have to kind of really play the ADP game to try to figure out what player you should target. So I would recommend syncing your league to Fantasy Pros, League Sync, and getting those mock drafts in that are custom to your league settings. So it's going to bring in the ADP from your league. So you can test out all of these strategies to get an idea. Okay, if I do pick Genty at 8, who are the receivers available to me? And you can kind of go through all those steps there. So for me, I'm cool with taking Genty at 8. And usually the receivers are available on the back end, but I will say that this depends on the site that you're drafting on. CBS, for example, for home leagues is running back heavy. Like there's so many running backs on CBS, whereas ESPN, you're going to see the receivers available a little bit more. Or the receivers are bumped up a little bit more compared to running back. So really, I think that your mindset is correct here, Ghosty, but I would sync your league, start doing those mock drafts in the mock draft simulator, and that's going to really get you the most prepared for your draft.
Yeah, okay. We got a couple more questions here before we get out. We got Dreflick saying Cam Ward over under 6 rushing touchdowns coming off most at Miami. Andrew, you tend to be slightly more in the betting streets than I am. How do you feel about Cam Ward rushing touchdowns?
I think I'm probably going to go under. I'm usually a guy that bets unders anyway. You have the injury out if guys miss time. And we don't always see the rushing touchdowns translate. I know Caleb Williams was a guy who scored a ton of rushing touchdowns in college, and he scored 0 last year. Now, maybe that's because the Bears' offense sucked, but that doesn't matter. I don't think that maybe he doesn't rush as much. 6 seems like a pretty aggressive number where we see a lot of pretty mobile quarterbacks. Like, I don't think Mahomes even hits this number on a consistent basis.
So last year, the only quarterbacks to score over 6 rushing touchdowns were Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, who both had double digits, of course. Jayden Daniels had 6, Anthony Richardson 6, Taysom Hill, if you call him a quarterback, 6, Justin Fields, Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson were all kind of like in that 5 to 6 range. So I think 6 is a very aggressive number. And I think when you look at what the Titans have in their running back room, I'd kind of be okay just going, probably going to bet the under here. And if it stings me, it stings me. So I love that one. That's a really thought-provoking one, but it's probably not one that I would take. I think we've got one more question here, and then we will finish up. Axel the G, who do you prefer drafting at the moment, James Cook or Ray Davis?
At first, I thought they said Brandon Cooks. I was like, I'm going to take Ray Davis. But I think I prefer Ray Davis regardless. I think that he showed out as a rookie. He looked pretty impressive. And this James Cook thing just seems like it's going to be, the vibes aren't good around James Cook. He wants a new contract.
Nope.
He's
business.
He's holding out on business. So I think that he's going to be worse than he was last year. He's not going to score as many touchdowns. And Ray Davis is a guy that, bet on second-year running backs taking a step forward. So I'm going to go with Ray Davis at his cost.
Yeah, Ray Davis just looked really impressive. Like the Bills don't tend to be a team who overload their rookies, but they gave him big moments at times, and he did well with it. He had a really nice role in the receiving game. James Cook is saying that he wants to improve in that area. Like, dude, this is not the time going into a contract here. Like, I think you have to accept that's probably not going to happen. James Cook is primed for regression. He was 24th in total running back scrimmage yardage last year, but the touchdowns absolutely carried him. And this offense in general wants to spread things around. So I'm kind of cool just taking the lower cost and saying that in a PPR format in particular, I think Ray Davis could have loads of upside. Andrew, we did it. We went slightly over the hour, but hey, the good people here on Twitch have absolutely been cooking in the comments tonight, and we want to make sure we get to them. And if you've got questions that we haven't got to, or if you're catching this on repeat, make sure you head over here to Twitch and make sure that you catch some of the other shows that we've got on this week. We've got Seth and Debro here on Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursday and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. There's always a show with different analysts on. And of course, next week on Monday, myself and Andrew will be here at a slightly later time of 7 p.m. Eastern, where myself and Andrew, we won't be drafting alongside each other next week. There will be no more nice guy. There will be no more speaking good about each other. Me and Andrew will be going head-to-head on the FFPC Superflex contest, $35 entry. We're going to tear each other to pieces and see which of us can draft a team that wins it all.
Who's going to get Rachaad White first?
Yeah, who's taking Bishal too, and who's taking all our favorite guys. We'll see who gets Tucker Craft. That's the one that I'm most interested in. But For myself, Andrew, and of course, producer Seth, and everybody in the comments, we truly appreciate you. We will be back next Monday. Have a great week, and make sure you get in Fantasy Pros Discord to ask all your questions.